Hey friends, welcome back to Hot Air with me, Joshua Robert. And sometimes these episodes are extremely unplanned, but I be scrolling through Instagram and I see something that catches my attention, and then it takes me into a spiral of deep thought or questioning what is even going on with the world. When I see a post that grabs my attention, the first thing I do is run to the comment section to see what people are saying, how they're interacting with each other. And then if it's something that I find a little bit misleading or confusing, or even if it's like very matter of fact, I always go research it. And almost more often than not, what is being displayed, what is being represented, what is the headline is not always based in fact. As we know, it's just a ploy to get us to pay attention, to convince us of something that might not 100% be rooted in fact. So that's really what we're talking about today. And if you've been on Instagram or TikTok or kind of anywhere online today specifically, or lately, depending on when you're listening to this, you've probably seen the headlines that Trump is bringing back the draft. Young men are about to be forced into the military. They're coming for you next. And people are spiraling, rightfully so. But like, take a pause, take a breath for a second. These people are in full panic mode, like worst case scenario thinking. Fear is spreading like wildfire. So, after I did my research, so that I didn't freak out or be like, oh my God, we're all being drafted. Like, this literally is World War III. I was like, maybe this will make a good episode. So, we are going to cut through all of that noise and we're going to get into what is actually happening based on facts, what is being twisted, and why this moment is a perfect example of why media literacy matters more than ever. Like, it's so important right now because shit be crazy. And let me be very, very clear from the start. This is not about defending any administration. And honestly, this is not even about politics. This is about truth, facts, and not letting yourself get manipulated by headlines that are designed to provoke emotion instead of inform you. Whether you support this administration or not, you still need to know what is real, what is embellished, and what is a full out fucking lie. Because misinformation doesn't discriminate no matter where you sit on the aisle, whatever side of the aisle you're sitting on. It will use you just as quickly as it will use someone who disagrees with you. And again, I don't like Trump. Y'all know that. If you've been following me for a long time, if you've been listening to this podcast, it's very evident that I don't love his administration. I think a lot of them are clowns. I think, unfortunately, people have been put in positions where they feel like they need to act a fool. Like, if Trump came to me and was like, do you want to be the FBI director? I'd be like, yeah, of fucking course I do. But I would have no idea what I'm doing. And my eyes would probably be even more crossed than fucking Kash Patel's eyeballs. Like, seriously. But I would say yes. I would 100% be like, yes, I will be the FBI director. Maybe that's Leo in me. I think I can do anything, but I think I'd do a great job, but I would be clueless. I would have no experience. So I don't love his administration. I don't like really anything that he stands for, but when things like this happen, it makes me pause. I go, okay, if I was MAGA, if I was a Republican and I saw this headline, I would be like, ugh, that's not the truth. That's not fact. They're trying to demonize him. And that's why we're all fighting. Because flip it around, me being more liberal and seeing a headline on Fox News, maybe that was super negative towards Biden, I would instantly go, ugh, they're trying to demonize him. Ugh, Republicans are the worst. They're so full of shit. But this goes both ways, people. Republican, Democrat, we are not just instantly not guilty of elaborating, of stretching the truth, of little white lies to get those clicks, those likes, to just like really push whatever the narrative or message is that we want to push. So before we do get into all that, make sure you're following me on Instagram and TikTok at _hotairpod. You can visit my website, hotairwithjoshuarobert.com, to shop my merch, submit your listener stories, and your topic suggestions. And let's just get in. Well, actually, hold on. Before we get into it, there's no visuals today because, as I said, this was impromptu. I like scrambled home after work and I was like, sit down, must record. So no visuals. Sorry about it. I didn't want to put my face on and it's hot and these lights in here make me toasty. The sweat mustache is sweat mustaching when I turn these lights on. But don't worry. I'll be back next week with the regular visuals in the new studio, all that good. So buckle up, put your thinking caps on, remove your tinfoil hats for a second. We're going to get into the facts, okay? Let's hit it. So let's start with what people think is happening right now. The internet is acting like a draft has already started, like young men are about to get letters in the mail and be shipped off to war, like something drastic has changed overnight. And that is simply not really true. There is no active draft in the United States. And the headlines that I was seeing were saying Trump is automatically signing up men 18 to 25 to be drafted. That's stretching the truth here. There is no active draft in the United States, and there has not been one since 1973. And in order for a draft to come back, it would require Congress to pass it and the president to sign off on it, which also, I mean, it wouldn't be that surprising, but it has not happened yet. And this is a massive, highly visible political process. It is not something that just quietly slips into effect without the entire country knowing. So if you're seeing content that makes it sound like people are about to be forced into military service right now, that is false. Full stop, end of story, not true. Now, here is where the confusion is actually coming from. There is a policy change, and it is real, but it's being completely misrepresented. What's changing is not the existence of the draft, but the way people are registered for it. Because here's the part that a lot of people either forget or never knew in the first place. I was one of those that never knew. The United States has required men between the ages of 18 and 25 to register with the Selective Service for decades. This is not new, and this has been in place since 1980. If you are a man in that age range, you are already legally required to be on that list. And if you do not register, there can be consequences like fines or losing access to certain federal benefits. So the idea that the government is suddenly creating a list of men, that list already exists. It has existed for over 40 years, but you had to sign up yourself. So what is changing is how you get on that list. Like I said previously, you had to register yourself. You either did it online, through the mail, or it was sometimes tied to things like getting a driver's license, depending on your state, or you had to apply in order to get a loan for school. But now, under a provision in the National Defense Authorization Act, the government will begin automatically registering eligible men using existing federal data. That's it. That is the change. Instead of putting the responsibility on individuals to sign up, the system will just do it for you. So in reality, this is less about control as of right now. I can definitely see this spiraling and going elsewhere, and it's just more about automation. It removes the step where someone could forget or not know or accidentally be breaking the law by not registering. It streamlines something that really already exists. Now, I am sure that some of you are thinking, okay, but why now? Why is this happening? And that is a very fair question. The reasoning that is being given, at least, is that registration rates have been declining, and the government wants to ensure that the system is accurate and up to date. It also reduces administrative costs and eliminates the need for outreach campaigns trying to remind people to register. And honestly, if you've ever gotten a driver's license in certain states, you've already experienced a version of this. Some states automatically register you when you apply. This is just taking that concept nationwide and making it consistent. What I do find very interesting is that a lot of people don't know about this. A lot of people are already signed up when they do get those driver's licenses in certain states. Seems a bit odd that it's a little bit more secretive and not talked about publicly as much as you would think that it would be. But here is where I want to pause, because just because something is being misunderstood doesn't mean that people's concerns are not completely valid. There is a difference between misinformation and underlying fear. And the fear that people are reacting to is the idea that this could be a step toward something bigger. Valid, valid, valid. That maybe this is laying the groundwork for a future draft. And, they always know things that we don't know. It's important to say this clearly right now that, like, right now, this change does not mean a draft is coming, but I can totally see why it would feel that way. There is no active plan to reinstate one, but at the same time, the existence of a registration system has always been about preparedness. It's a just in case system. So while people are wrong to say that this means a draft is happening now, it's also not completely crazy to recognize that systems like this exist for a reason. Both things can be true at once, and the timing is very interesting with Trump, starting wars. And this is where critical thinking becomes so important because the media environment we're in thrives on extremes. It is either this is nothing, don't worry about it at all, or this is the beginning of the end. And the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. This is not nothing, but it's also not what it's being made out to be. And if you only consume information from sources that lean heavily one way or the other, you're going to get a distorted version of reality. That's just the truth. That's the way it's going to play out. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about the history here because context is going to change pretty much everything. The draft, as most people think of it, was heavily used during major conflicts like World War II and the Vietnam War. And during Vietnam, especially, it became incredibly controversial. There were protests, there was resistance, there were serious questions about fairness and who was being called to serve. And eventually, in 1973, the United States moved to an all-volunteer military force. That means the military we have today is made up of people who choose to be there. But even after the draft ended, the selective service system stayed in place. Why? Because the government wanted to maintain the ability to scale up quickly in the event of a national emergency. So the system has basically been in standby mode for decades. It's like a fire alarm you hope you never have to use, but you keep it there just in case. So when people act like this registration system is something brand new, it shows how disconnected we've become from understanding our own policies. This isn't new. It's just being updated. And honestly, a lot of the outrage that we're seeing is coming from people learning about selective service for the first time and assuming it just appeared out of nowhere. A lot of people didn't know that ICE even existed prior to this. It behaves very differently, but it's always been a thing. And that's not the people's fault for not knowing that selective service exists. It's not their fault entirely, but it is a reminder of how important it is to actually know the systems that already exist before reacting to changes within them. My initial reaction was, oh my God, he's setting us up for World War III. I'm not even an American citizen. I have a green card. Are they going to draft me? Am I going to have to put on a cute little camo suit? Like, will it fit me? Will I look good? Will I still look muscular? Or is it going to be oversized? Like, okay, obviously I'm taking the piss out of it. I didn't think about those things, but my initial reaction was, oh my God, what's happening? That's when I go, okay, pause for a second. Let's research this. So before we freak out about systems that we know nothing about, educate yourself. Now let's talk about the role of the media in all of this, because this is where things get very, very messy. As we know, headlines are designed to grab your attention. They are not designed to give you a full, nuanced understanding of the situation. There's not even facts in those headlines half the time. And when you combine that with social media, where content is rewarded based on engagement, you get a perfect storm for misinformation. Like, we've all posted something that maybe the caption was a little racy, or a picture that gets more attention than others because perhaps you're butt ass naked. Like, if the algorithm likes it, more people are going to see it, and fear spreads faster than facts. Outrage gets more clicks than context, and suddenly a policy change about administration process turns into a viral narrative about forced military service, and people run with it because it feels urgent and dramatic. But here's the thing. Just because something feels urgent doesn't mean it's accurate. And just because a lot of people are saying something doesn't make it true. We have to get better at pausing before reacting, which I was very proud of myself because I went to the comment section and I was like reading, and then I did my research, and then I went back and I was like, well, this isn't really fact-based, da-da-da-da-da. This has been taking place for years, just in a different way. People commented, people responded, and were like, oh yeah, keep supporting Trump. And I was like, girl, my first reaction was to like pop off because why the fuck not, keyboard warrior over here. But I was like, no, just relay the message, keep explaining. That's what hot air is here to do, just to clarify. So like we need to get better at pausing before we react, especially when something is going to trigger very strong emotional responses like this. That's usually a sign that you need to dig deeper, not share faster. And also, you don't really get to complain about being misled if you're not willing to verify information before you spread it. Before you press the share button, verify that shit. That responsibility is on all of us now. We are not just consumers of media anymore. We are participants in how information spreads. And every time you repost something, every time you share a headline without reading the full article, you're contributing to that narrative, whether you like it or not. So if the narrative is wrong, you are part of the problem, whether you're intending to be a part of the problem or not. So let's bring it back to the bigger picture. What's happening right now is not a draft. It's not the government suddenly deciding to force people into military service. It is a shift in how an existing requirement is handled. That's reality for now. It's still an important moment. It highlights how quickly misinformation can spread and honestly how terrified we all are to go to war. And that should all be concerning regardless of your political beliefs, because if it can happen with this, it can really happen with anything. And that's why I always say you don't have to agree with an administration to try to understand what's actually happening. I don't have to always demonize, although it's kind of fun to demonize Trump and his friggin' stupid cabinet, or I don't even know what they're called, his clown show, his horse and pony show, his circus, whatever. They're not wonderful. I demonize them a lot. But before I spiral, I do some looking up. You don't have to support something to want accurate information about it. In fact, if you oppose something, you should want your arguments to be based on facts, not exaggeration and drama and fueled by emotion and being heated and angry. Like, misinformation is going to weaken your credibility. So do your research, and it makes it easier for people to dismiss valid concerns when they're mixed in with things that are not true. So again, it's not the start of the draft, but it is a reminder that systems exist for a reason, and a reminder that policies are ever evolving, and a reminder that we need to live in an information environment where the loudest voice is not always the most accurate one. But I do want to take this conversation one step further, because what's happening with the draft registration story is not new. The only thing that's new is that you are noticing it. This exact pattern where a story is technically rooted in truth, but presented in a way that shifts how you feel about it. And that has been happening for fucking ever across both sides of the political spectrum. And if you really want to protect yourself from being manipulated, you got to start recognizing the pattern, not just reacting to the moment. So we're going to run through a few major examples quickly, briefly. I'm not going to get into like all the deets and the grime of it all, but I want you to listen for the similarities because they all follow a similar playbook. So first, the weapons of mass destruction narrative in the early 2000s. The public was told that Iraq had active weapons of mass destruction and posed an immediate threat. That claim was used to justify going to war. But after the invasion, those stockpiles were never found. Now, here's where it gets important. The issue wasn't that information existed, it's that it was presented with a level of certainty that wasn't actually there. Intelligence was treated like fact, and media outlets repeated it without enough skepticism. It's the media's job to be a skeptic, and they were not. That's not just misinformation, that's overconfidence presented as truth, and that literally changed the course of history. Now, fast forward to 2017 and the very fine people comment from Donald Trump after Charlottesville. You have probably heard that clip 100 times. The narrative became that he called white supremacists very fine people. And yes, he did use that phrase. He said very fine people on both sides. But what often gets left out is that in the same statement, he explicitly condemned white supremacists and neo-Nazis. So what happened was selective editing, selective framing, a real quote, but stripped of surrounding context in a way that reshaped its meaning. And that, I feel like, happened a lot with Charlie Kirk. There was a lot of little sound bites that people would take. And when he was assassinated, I went and listened to a lot of his stuff so that I could have more context. And while I disagree with almost everything Charlie Kirk had to say, almost everything Donald Trump has to say, do I think they're racist? Yes. Do I think they're homophobic? Yes. Do I think some of them are pedophiles? Yes. But it's still possible to manipulate their words. It's still possible to remove what they said before something viral and what they said after and just use a very small clip. So again, I'm not defending these people's behavior, but when you have the bigger picture, things sound a little different. They feel a little different. Your brain, my brain anyway, just processes everything these, in my opinion, horrible humans were saying. Still horrible, but not as horrible. And depending on where you get your information, you either saw the full picture or a version that's designed to confirm what you already believe based on what you are already watching. Then there's the Hunter Biden laptop story during the 2020 election. When it first came out, several outlets and platforms dismissed it as potential Russian disinformation. Some even restricted the story from being shared. But later, major news organizations confirmed that much of the material was authentic. So, what went wrong there? It wasn't just misinformation, it was premature, certainly in the opposite direction. A situation where skepticism turned into suppression before the facts were fully verified. And again, depending on your media bubble, you either saw it as a conspiracy or as a cover up. And let's talk about COVID and the lab leak theory. Early in the pandemic, the idea that the virus could have originated from a lab was widely labeled as a conspiracy theory and shut down in many spaces. But as time went on, that possibility became a legitimate hypothesis discussed by scientists and intelligence agencies. That doesn't mean it's proven, but it does mean it should never have been dismissed as impossible. This is what happens when narratives get locked away way too early. When uncertainty exists, but instead of saying, we don't know yet, let's talk about this, the message becomes, this is false. And that is not science. That is just messaging. Now let's look at something that got completely distorted on both sides. The phrase, defund the police. Depending on who you ask, it either meant abolishing police entirely or simply reallocating funding to social services. The reality, it meant different things to different people, very different things. But that ambiguity created the perfect opportunity for manipulation. One side amplified the most extreme interpretation to generate fear, while the other sometimes softened the message to make it more palatable. Same phrase, completely different meanings, depending on who was telling the story. And that was done by the media, both sides of the media. And we're all just over here fighting. Then we have January 6th, one of the most polarizing events in recent history. And if you watched coverage from different outlets, you would think they were describing entirely different events. Some framed it strictly as an insurrection and an attack on democracy. Others minimized it as a protest that got out of hand. And the truth is, it was a mix of behaviors. There were people there peacefully protesting, and there were people committing violent acts and breaching the Capitol. But instead of presenting the full spectrum, coverage often leaned heavily in one direction or the other. And that's not lying, that's just framing. Choosing what to highlight and choosing what to ignore. Okay, again, something even more recent. We love it. Inflation. When those prices start rising, different narratives emerge. Some said it was entirely due to government spending. Others blamed global supply chain issues or corporate greed. And the reality, it was all of those things combined. But complex answers don't perform well in headlines. So what do we get instead? Simplified explanations that fit a political narrative. And again, people latch onto the version that aligns with what they already believe. Okay, and finally, immigration and the border. This is another issue where framing completely changes perception. Some outlets describe it as an open border crisis, emphasizing chaos and lack of control. Others focus primarily on humanitarian aspects and downplay the scale of the situation. And the truth is, both of those elements exist. There are record numbers of encounters, and there are complex legal and humanitarian systems at play. It's so much more complex than we even understand. Well, than the basic person like you and I, maybe, unless you're listening and you're DHS, but like me, it's a lot to wrap your head around. But depending on what you're shown, your understanding of that issue can, will, and does shift. Okay, so why am I walking through all of this? Well, every single one of these examples follows a similar pattern that we're seeing right now with this whole draft registration story. A piece of truth is taken, and then it is shaped and framed, simplified, or amplified in a way that creates a specific emotional reaction. That could be fear, or outrage, or validation, whatever keeps you engaged. That's really marketing, people. And once that emotional reaction kicks in, critical thinking usually goes out the window, checks out, leaves the chat. And what really matters, it's not just a media problem. This is a human problem. We are wired to accept information that confirms what we already believe. It feels good. It feels validating. It feels like, see, I was right. Like ChatGPT was designed originally to agree with you, to be your bestie. This new version has a little bit more, nuance in it, but like it's still very agreeable. And that makes us feel good. It makes us want to use it more. And that's exactly why it's so easy to manipulate, because the most effective misinformation does not feel like a lie. It feels like the truth you are already leaning towards. So when you see a story like this draft situation blow up online and people immediately jump to worst case scenarios, you gotta ask yourself, am I reacting to facts, or am I reacting to how this is being presented to me? Because those are not the same thing. And if you don't learn how to separate the two, you will keep getting pulled into narratives that are designed to control your perception, not inform it. That is why doing your own research matters, and not in a conspiracy theory type of way. Like, I'm going to figure out the secrets of the universe and Illuminati, not that kind of way. Just grounded and responsible. Read beyond the headline. Look at multiple sources. Pay attention to what is being left out, not just what's being said. And most importantly, be willing to sit in discomfort of not having a clear, simple answer. Reality is complicated, and anyone who tries to make it seem overly simple is usually selling you something, whether that's clicks or a specific point of view. At the end of the day, being informed isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing how to question what you're being told. And if you can do that, you are already way ahead of most people. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you're following me on Instagram and TikTok at _hotairpod for more combos like this. Visit my website, hotairwithjoshuarobert.com, to shop my merch, submit your listener stories, and send in your topic suggestions. And honestly, this is one of those episodes that would be really good to send to people. Anybody, a family member, a friend who you feel is really swayed by the media. Maybe they follow CNN too much. Maybe they follow Fox too much. Maybe they only get their news and their updates from one singular place. Like, let's open up the minds of the world, people, because we're all in this together, whether we like it or not. So until next time, stay curious, stay informed, stay Googling, use ChatGPT if you need some answers, and I will see you next Tuesday.